I honestly think every problem can be solved with better hiring, or at least better talent processes. And what I mean by that is like hiring is one part of it. Being able to grow your people, being able to keep them, even being able to exit them properly. That whole just like how you manage your talent in a business. Ultimately, that's everything. That's everything. Like your business wins and loses and lives and dies by the people that you have in your company. So I don't think that's hyperbolic at all. I think that's just the reality of things. So hiring is just that very first step of just bringing someone into your company. You still have so much work to do to make sure they're a valuable member um, and an ambassador and everything else. But like on the hiring side, that's why it's so important. Even I think even at the indie or like just at the smaller company stage, one person is just a bigger percentage of the team.
Yeah.
So hiring, not only is it more difficult because you might have not as a strong a brand or scrappy processes, less tools and everything else, it's even more important that you are so dialed into knowing what you're looking for, understanding the culture of what you want to build and what it is right now, and all these other things. Because you make one wrong hire, that could lead into ultimately someone being a toxic addition to your company, and things can really go badly from there. And the flip reverse is true. You hire one incredible hire, and then suddenly your company is benefiting multiple folds over. So yeah, I think AAA, bigger teams, in theory, can get away with it, but that's again where things can go wrong. If I remember at EA, I remember one time I was hiring for 32 jobs at the exact same time.
Oh, wow.
That is, yeah, yeah. I was, I was definitely that. Thankfully, that was a very short burst. I would have definitely have burnt out if that was prolonged. Usually, by the way, it's usually around like 15 ish in when you're at 15 to 20 when you're in a big company, something like that. But still, if you are hiring over and over again with speed and you're scaling and everybody in the interview process is just like happy with mediocre. Suddenly, you end up with an entire company full of mediocre people or people who are not quite right, either on skills or cultural side. So, of course, it's important no matter what size of the company you are. But I think I'm biased. I'm working with startups and small companies right now, and so my head goes to, well, it's more important for them. I think.
So I've done some interviews in the past. I've been fortunate enough to do it in my current job. And one of the things I really look for, and this is something that has helped me in my own interviews, is you have to have a story, right? You have to have a vocation and a reason for wanting this job. It's not enough to say, hey, I had this experience or I really want this. Like, what led you to the point of applying for this role? Like, what is this story that you're telling to the recruiter or the hiring manager or the person that's interviewing you? And I just wanted to ask you, like, what your thoughts are on just storytelling and being able to portray some kind of journey to the person that is interviewing you.
Um, that's a really great question because, well, my initial response is, yeah, it's really important, but I don't want to just be like, yeah, it's important to move on from that. Um, I think, yeah, I think this is perhaps part of the interview prep that people push to the side somewhat. I would say, I this is a guess on statistics, but let's just say 9 out of 10
Yeah.
people open a job interview from the interviewer's perspective with, "Tell me about yourself," or like some version of
Yeah.
that. Right? It's a very low risk question just to get the ball rolling and the interview started. But the interview is just every second, every minute of that interview should be you convincing that person that you're awesome. So don't just be like, oh well, just tell them what you've done that day. Oh, I'm fine. It's a chance to sell yourself, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, so your story is really should be aligned with your passions, right? And especially when you're interviewing with the games industry. I remember when I was interviewing Epic Games, it was like, tell me about yourself. I was just be like, well, first of all, I should say I'm so excited to be here. I played over 1,000 hours of Gears of War 3, so the Epic Games logo is burned into my retinas. I
Right
use
here,
that,
right? Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I used that exact line. The Epic Games logo is burned into my retinas, and I was like, that's how I kicked it off. And funny enough, um, remember James Golding, who actually recently left Epic, but he was there for like 20 years. We worked closely together with hiring while I was there, but he was interviewing me and he worked on all the Gears of War games. And you know what? That interview, we spent the first half just talking about like my love for Gears of War, him working on it, back and forth, and we just struck a chord. And ultimately that put me on a good foot as the start of it, how an interview goes. So I think if you're in the games industry, the great thing about this industry is that everyone's here, like, well, vast majority of people are here because they love games. It's like a very much a we're intellectually curious about games. We're like, we spend our spare time playing games and we spend our work time making games. It's like an all consuming thing. So I think it's very easy to go for an interview with someone who works in games and then just be like, let's chat about games. You know, that's what everyone loves to do ultimately in the industry. So I think having that aligned with your story, like how you got to where you are now, and also making sure it's concise. Like the amount of times I've just been like, cool, so tell me about yourself. And it's like 20 minutes later, they're still
On and on and
talking.
on.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I actually now say, in under 2 minutes, can you tell me about yourself? That's how I usually start, just to give them some guidance on that. But yeah, your story should be just a reflection of who you are as a person, your values, your interests, and everything else. And if you can keep practicing that, it's going to make you stand out because the vast majority of people are terrible at it. So
I wanted to start there because that's one of the things that I think really stands out when it comes to trying to get a job or trying to hire for someone. I'm always looking for a story. I'm always trying to tell my own story because I think that makes me connect with people. It shows the obsession or the drive I have with the particular game or the industry itself. But before we get into all kind of the cool stuff we want to talk about in terms of recruitment, what has been your story into breaking into games? Because we talked offline about how you had your own adventure or your journey to the
yeah.
games industry, which I also have my own, and I would love to hear yours, and as I think the audience as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Happy to actually. And I've shared this story a lot because I think it is a pretty good blueprint to how to get into games. Um, that said, obviously it won't work for everybody. There's a bit of luck in there. And also, yeah, but I think everyone sharing their stories on how they got into games is the best way to help people get in, right? So I mentioned I was working at this American sports analytics company called Huddle. Now, while I worked there, I had quite a reputation for loving video games. Be like all I'd be talking about. I'd organize like FIFA tournaments in the office, LAN parties, board games nights. This was like my whole, spare time would just be in on this, getting consoles setting up in the office and all this sort of stuff. Funny enough, you work in tech, you also have a lot of people who love video games too. So that was an easy one. But yeah, I just remember one day thinking, yeah, chatting to my now wife. She's super smart, by the way. And she was like, "Man, you talk about games all the time. Like, you're obviously very passionate about it. But why don't you just go work in games?" And I was just like, "Oh, go work in games. Oh yeah, sure." She was like, "Well, like, is it that hard?" I was like, "I don't know." First step was like figuring it out. So I had like so many spreadsheets going on. And I guess what I was trying to figure out is, like, I was living in London. Funny enough, there's loads of games companies in London. So trying to figure out, firstly, the game studios and companies I was really passionate about. Where are they? Are they commuting distance to me? Are these the types of companies that hire recruiters? Good example would be Nintendo. Nintendo, yes, they have an office in London. Do they hire their recruiters there? No, they tend to hire their recruiters in Seattle or wherever it is, right? So that's, and Germany, I think. So that's a good example of that. Like, really cool games company in my location, but wouldn't hire my skill set, for example. And yeah, so anyway, went on a spree of like mapping out all the companies that I could commute to that I think would have a need at some point for someone in recruiting, and then just started reaching out and obviously applying for jobs if I found those jobs. But most of the effort was gone into like opportunistic networking, and it would just be a very personalized message to someone in HR recruiting, could be studio director, and just be like, hey, I just want to put you on my put me on your radar. I exist. I love your studio for these reasons. If a job comes up, let me know. Obviously, you don't get replies to a lot of those types of messages, but some people do reply. In fact, one person did reply. It was a guy called Dan Picking, and he was the recruit manager at EA at the time. And he was like, "Oh, thanks, nothing right now. I'll let you know." But I had alerts on like every job site going for games and LinkedIn and everything else. So I remember I got pinged on my phone. EA is looking for a recruiter. It was a contract position. I was in a permanent 6-month contract. I was in a permanent role at the time. Anyway, I immediately applied. Already had Dan on LinkedIn message, and I was like, "Hey, it's me again. I've just applied. I will happily commute out to Guildford, and quit my permanent job for a contract role at EA." Yeah, went for an interview, and then got it. So, but yeah, like that was a risk, right? Like I took a big pay cut. Took a big pay cut. Not only did I take a pay cut, I had to buy a car so I could get there.
Yeah.
And like not just the car, I had to pay for parking and the fuel. Oh my goodness, took a big actually took a big financial hit. And then also I was creating a permanent job that I was actually doing pretty well in to take a short-term contract. And then I talk about my wife at the time was just like, okay, this is pretty risky, but if you believe in it, then fine, I'll back you. And then 4 months into that 6-month contract, they converted me to a permanent role. And then I was in the games industry.
And the rest is
Great.
history.
Yeah. Some of the luck factors in there, obviously, it's so hard to do right now, 2025. 2017, a little bit easier to do, right? So, but I think the learning from that was I was going to every event, meetup that I could, like after work, joining games forums online, reaching out to people in the games industry. I'm a recruiter. I'm so comfortable with reaching out to people I don't know. Um, so that helps. But if people can be as comfortable with that, then great. So it was just very methodical. And the people I did reach out to that got back to me, I had all these alerts going off every 3 months. Make sure to check in with this person. So I'd just be like, hey, just checking in and these sorts of things. So yeah, it took me 13 months from that day from saying I want to get a job in games to actually starting at EA was about 13 months. So it was, yeah, a bit of a grind. But I guess my last thought on that, by the way, is that it was I said a big pay cut and stuff, but ultimately it was just like a lateral move in my career. I went from hiring software engineers at a software company to hiring software engineers at a software company, right? Get video games as software, right? And I was hiring engineers. There was and because I could so comfortably talk about video games in the interview process, I knew all of the local all the local game studios. I could talk to the people in the studio about games. I was like not just a player of games, but very much like critically thinking about games and their systems. And I loved reading dev articles about these things. So when it came to my ramp up time, it was very fast to like getting to the point where I was very comfortably hiring games programmers rather than just, say mobile developers. So all of that, I say to my mum, it was research all along. I've got in the background behind me, I've got my N64 and Sega Mega Drive from when I was a kid. It was research all along. But my point being is that I took a pay cut and a lateral move in my career to make that happen, to get onto the ladder that I actually wanted to be on.
You took a
Uh,
risk. You
yeah,
took a
yeah,
massive risk.
and sometimes you need to take a step back to get into games, um, or take a step back to just like do something that you really love, so you can then put all your passions into that, and it doesn't take long to get back to where you were, to be honest. So
2 steps back, 3 steps forward.
yeah, yeah, something like that.
Can I I made that up, but can I say quite
Yeah, yeah.
um, I had a very similar kind of breaking into the games industry as you. I also kind of came out of a product manager role, a junior product manager role in a tech startup in London. It went bust, and I remember I was back home for the summer thinking, "What the hell am I gonna do?" And I saw a junior product manager contractor role at EA. And that's what kinda got me my start. I ended up applying for it because I was an assistant instructor at this, school called General Assembly that teaches product. They kinda liked that in my profile, but I had no experience in games, and I wasn't directly working in games, but I was working in EA. And I did that for 9 months, and that alone on my CV was enough for another company to give me a shot at working on a mobile game startup. But that was a big risk for me as well, because like a contractor, you're not making near as much money, have to travel to Guildford all the time, trains, just getting there, unsure of if you'll ever actually end up working in a game studio or working in some kind of games capacity. But I just thought that was kind of really neat to hear, because that's something I felt myself. And at the time, I just remember thinking, I'm going for it. Like, even if it's going to be tough, even if it's going to be a pay hit, this is what I want to do. And looking back, it was essential that I did that, even though maybe at the time I couldn't really see the dots aligning. They ended up doing that.
Yeah, that's great. Hey, there we go. We have a shared similarity. Started up at EA, and by the way, whenever I mention EA to like the average gamer, they're always like, evil corporate," and I'm like, I loved my time there.
Yeah,
So
they
many
were
great.
great.
I still have so many good friends from EA. Really fantastic place to work and to learn skills that like at a global level. So yeah. Um, anyway, highly recommend it to anyone thinking of applying. So
So yeah, going back to kind of what makes a good hire for the people listening, I'm sure they might have already kind of broken a bit into the games industry, or maybe they're looking to do an interview or prepare their CV. What makes a good hire in a game studio in general? I know it's a very general question and it's tricky,
oh
but
yeah,
what
oh
what
yeah.
what are you looking for? I know you might have been hiring for people who work on the engine and are very technical, or maybe a designer, or someone who works in marketing or go to marketing. What in your mind is something that you're looking for beyond kind of the story that we talked about? But is it culture fit? Is it communication? Is it again someone's technical skills? All of the above.
Mm. Yeah, good question. Right. So I think I think technical skills aside, pushing that aside because it's like,
That's
well,
that's
there's you kind of need to know how to be able to do the job at the level as kind of
yeah.
advertised for as like a given, right? So, where my mind actually goes to first is just that collaborative skill set. I've even worked in the most highly technical engine teams, Unreal, Frostbite, and even still, none of these positions are isolated, siloed roles. You might have teams that go off into silos, especially R&D type teams. But it is phenomenally rare to find someone who's like, I am a team of one in this company, and I get to do what I want, when I want, and I don't want anyone to. I want everyone to just leave me alone so I can just work. Oh my goodness, like, there's not a lot of that. There's a lot of that in like academia, where you can just be like, go down a rabbit hole. You've got your budget, you can go research and everything else. Great. Games is just not the one. It's such a phenomenally difficult thing to create this blend of art and science, and all um all crafts are coming together. So I think number one, big company, tiny company, like being able to collaborate is key. And by collaborate, I mean really specifically, I think that means your communication style, being able to be respectful and actually useful in your communication style. You can be an highly introverted, and obviously highly extroverted, and still be a fantastic collaborator. Being a collaborator doesn't mean like all jazz hands all the time. It just means like, can respect other work? Do you know how to strike a middle ground? So many people want so many things from a game, especially AAA, 200 people in the studio, whatever. Everyone has a voice. This whole everyone has a voice thing is somewhat of a myth. Like ultimately, the leadership have the voice, right? They want to hear your feedback, but they may or may not take it, right? But so being able to voice that, being able to truly listen to other people, then being able to accept what the direction is, and then going for it, is definitely a skill. It's a skill that I think can be learned somewhat, but get get ready for that. To be highly collaborative. I think also as well having a real empathy and appreciation for all of the crafts. I've hired concept artists that come from a fine art background, phenomenal painters, and that have moved into digital work, and then hired people that have gone from like aerospace engineering, C++ into ultimately engine programming, right? you'd think two completely different type of people. They are ultimately both putting together their best work to make this one thing. So being so empathetic and understanding of everybody's strengths and skills, that's got to be number one. I think, because if anyone spots that you're not like that in the interview process, you're not going to get anywhere. so regardless of your skills, so that's definitely one. I think as well, like company by company, every company will have their own culture and their own values and their own ways of doing things. And so you may have, it's my dream to work at X, but actually it might be a completely terrible fit for you. And it doesn't mean that company is bad or good, like morally. It just means like this company likes to make decisions this way in maybe a like aristocratic or like very top down way, and this company likes to for everybody to make a decision is much more democratic. Neither of those, like one isn't bad and one isn't good inherently. It's just different ways of making decisions and communicating. But you may find through your career that you really gravitate to one over another. So I think it's really key, like especially early in your career, you got to figure out how your brain works and figure out what your values are and just gun for those companies. Because if you force yourself into a company where it's not your true self to work in that way and it's not your true self to like align with those missions and values, you're just going to be fighting uphill the entire way. It's going to, if you slot into a company where everything just feels so natural and flows, you get on with everybody and it's just so easy to get your work done, you are just going to fly. You're going to get all those promotions and do great work and everything else. So I think that's another thing. And the whole point of a great recruiting team is to figure that out, like to take all this ethereal company culture value stuff and then try and find those people. Obviously, skills as well, but really trying to quantify, is this person going to thrive in this culture or are they going to just quit in a year's time because they're sick of it? So yeah, that's kind of the top two. The third one on skills, AAA, the bar is high, and people I think from outside of games don't really understand how high that bar is. The amount of times I've been sent portfolios, and I'm like, there's not a chance, not a chance. And at the time in the past, I've been a bit nicer, been like, oh, maybe now if someone sends me a terrible portfolio from quality perspective, I should be like, sorry, this is not the quality that you'd expect to get into AAA. I don't have to tell them they're terrible. I just have to tell them the
You have
quality is not up to
to
speed.
build yourself up, right? Like
Yeah,
I
yeah,
completely
yeah,
like, you have to be realistic. Like if you're coming in fresh into the games industry, maybe you have some game development experience, or you
yeah.
built your own game, or you're a software developer in another company, or you're an artist in some other kind of industry. If you want to break into AAA and your dream is to work at EA or Epic Games, you have to work your way up and prove that you can work in smaller companies to then start playing with the big dogs. Like that's,
Yeah,
I just feel like that's a natural progression. I think some people maybe set that unrealistic expectation, jump straight
yeah,
into applying for a really big role, and that just it's
yeah.
difficult. Like you wouldn't want to hire someone that doesn't have that experience directly off.
Yeah, exactly. And also, the big difference between a very large game studio and a very small one is that the very large game studio, they will hire people for their vertical skill set. So what I mean by that, they'll have an art team, and in the art team they'll have concept, environment, 3D, character, etc. And all of those are exceptionally good in their specific discipline. They know how to do that one particular thing at a very high quality level. Whereas small studio, like their art team is two people and they do everything. They build they concept it out, they build the environment, they got the characters going on. They may even be doing dabbling a bit of tech art and building pipelines. So then it's like, oh, these generalists are massively valuable. If you took a AAA character artist and then threw them in that environment, it's they might not like it, or they may have such a ramp up time to learn just enough of everything to be able to like be productive. So that's also something to be aware of from a skills perspective. Like AAA goes very, very niche and very deep, and smaller studios will go very, very shallow and very broad. And again, that comes back to like what type of work sounds good to you, as well, and where do you think you would thrive, and then go for that too. So yeah.
Well, I think people in their 20s, like I emphasize with this because when I went from the junior product manager role at EA, I took you could say a step back, but to me it was a step forward into a small mobile game startup, still in London, but away from that AAA kind of. There was an idea that maybe I could rise up in EA, and I had that kind of that dream a little bit. But then I thought the most important thing I can do in my 20s is to learn, and
Mm.
the best way
Yeah.
to learn is to get into a startup. And that's what I tell everyone who's kind of in their 20s is like your 20s are there for you to figure out kind of what you want to do, but also to learn as much as you can and to expose yourself in a situation where you get responsibility, you see what others are doing. Because, like you said, when you get into the bigger leagues, it's all about what can you specifically do at a very high level, not can you kind of just do a bit of everything. Like if you're an
Yeah.
artist, you might do a bit of this design, you might do a bit of this character art, you might help with some marketing materials. But when you're working AAA, like the marketing team's doing their own thing, the artists are doing the other thing. Like it's much more vertical.
Yeah.
So
So it's also something you were just saying there about in your 20s, obviously you learn, well, I mean, obviously it's a non-stop learning curve, but I think I think with career progression, or just progression in general, growing any skills, it always takes so much longer than you actually think. I think most people, when they start their career, obviously loads of energy, not a lot of skills, and it's like, oh, I haven't been promoted in my first year out of university. It's like, so everyone else that's like at the senior level, they're like, whoa, okay, it's been 12 months. So there's always this push and pull between perhaps someone who's absolutely dying to get that next promotion and stuff, um, and then other people being like, well, yeah, you haven't quite proved it yet, or anything like that. And sometimes quite easy to find someone who might be the same age as you, same years of experience of you, like climbing fast, and you're just like, oh, what about them? So I think, yeah, if you focus on your learning, saying yes to all the learning opportunities that you can, like eventually the money and the job title and the autonomy and responsibility like comes. So yeah, my advice for my younger self would be just chill.
just
just
chill,
just chill,
just enjoy
chill,
the
just
ride.
chill a second.
Enjoy the ride. But one thing that stood out when you were telling me the story about how you kind of broke into EA initially is that in
Yeah.
order to get there, you had to research all the different roles. Like you had to have alerts on and kind of map out where all the different studios are. And you had like a list that you were running through. And that is partially what it takes. And to me, that screams that you're comfortable with rejection. You're ready to go through and just find one company that's willing to give you a shot. And I think a lot of
Mm,
people put a lot of pressure on themselves to be like, I'm going to do these three roles. I'm going to apply for them. If I don't get them, I'm going to tear myself down. It's like, no, for me, every interview you do is you're learning how to do the next interview better because you've gone
mm.
through one, you've experienced the questions, and B, you're kind of just proving to yourself that you're willing to do this, that you are willing to put up with the rejection, with the difficulty, etc. And I think that was really special. So I just wanted to kind of lean on that, on what you did, which is kind of having this obsession, wanting to map this out as much as possible and just go for it.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it's like I was also just thinking of then being I saw an event where I can't even remember his name now, but he was like head of talent at Riot Games at the time, and I was like, right, I'm gonna go to that event, and then I was like, I'm gonna sit in the front row, I'm gonna ask a really curious question, and then I'm gonna go speak to that person afterwards. I was like, went to that event with such an agenda. Anyway, yeah, I did. That is exactly what happened. Just being like, shakes hand. Hey, I was just like, I'd love to get into the games industry. I've been trying now for a few months. Got any advice? And then anyway, we've we kept in touch after that. It didn't lead to a job at Riot Games, but that was just another imprint. And it was just like if you can do that over and over and over again, it will eventually work. Also, my goal was to get into the games industry. My goal wasn't to work for a specific company. And so when your goal is much bigger than that, I was like, whether I work at indie studio, whether I work at AAA, I really didn't mind. Whether it was like a games media marketing agency or whether it was like a games retailer or whatever it was, there's such a variety of things that class as being in the games industry. It doesn't have to be a game developer or a games publisher. I was just like anything to do with games, foot in the door, I'll take it. And like I said, the luck came in that I landed in one of the biggest game developers and publishers. I'm like, okay, well,
In the world.
that was a better start than I was expecting, but I was very much willing to join something on the, on the outer edges of the games industry, or something smaller or something like that. So that was the goal. So if that is the goal, to get into games, then it's like, well, of course I'm going to speak to hundreds of people, because that'd be silly not to. But if your goal is just to be in one company, then oh my goodness, you're just limiting yourself.
And you can still have that goal, but that can be a very long-term goal. So if you want to work at Riot and you're thinking, okay, how do I get to Riot? Well, I'm going to probably have to get some jobs in other game studios
Yeah,
first, right? I'm probably going to have to
yeah.
work. You got to get there.
Sorry, going back to that point I mentioned earlier about
Yeah.
um, being figuring out if your brain, how your brain works, and your values and everything else, and then trying to find companies that align with that. So often, so like, be it Epic, and someone's like, "It's my dream to work at Epic Games because I love Fortnite," and I'm like, those two statements aren't connected.
Yeah.
Just because you love Fortnite doesn't mean you will love working here. Like, and yeah, so I've seen that time and time again. I loved World of Warcraft, therefore it is my dream to work at Blizzard. It's like, really? Like, do you know what it's like to work there? Like, have you talked to anyone who works there? Have you like painted a picture in your mind of what it is like genuinely? Because you might not like it. Um, so so it's like, yeah, I find that interesting, when people put all their hopes and dreams into one product, or one company, because they make a product that they love, so because it might be like, oh, I love this game, and it's like, what do you love about the game? Art style, maybe the values that come across from it, and all these sorts of things. It's like, if you really whittle down what you love about their game, you might be able to find all of those other things in so many other games companies, and then it's like, go chase all of those as well. So
It's not the product, it's the discipline. It's what makes the game great, not the game itself.
yeah, yeah,
I couldn't agree more. But then on that point, then I want to shift to networking. What does it mean to network, especially for people who maybe don't have an active network? They're trying to break into games. They don't know
yeah,
how. Um, we've talked about kind of, I sent you a cold LinkedIn message just saying, hey, would you like to be on this podcast? And that's very much how I'm approaching this podcast, from a
yeah,
grassroots level. I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
know anyone, and I just got to kind of reach out. So what is your experience, personally, with kind of networking at the start in your journey, but also for kind of great hires that you've noticed have that will to get out there and meet people and gather information and build a context,
Yeah, I've got quite a few thoughts on networking. I love that it's such a cursed word for some people.
right? Yeah, yeah, it sounds
Absolutely,
cool.
they absolutely hate the word. They hate the idea of it, and build up so much anxiety about it. But they don't. A lot of the time, people don't realize they're networking already. Networking is all it is a very corporate term for meeting people that you don't know, and it's like, you meet people you don't know on a daily, almost daily basis. And it's also like, you you comment on the post of someone in the games industry you really admire. They respond to your comment. That's networking.
Networking.
So that's done. You join a Discord community. You say hi in the welcome group. That's networking. You go to a games industry event. You turn to someone at the bar and say, "Hey," that's networking. Um, like, that's all it is, really. I think I'm quite privileged. Privileged now. Didn't feel privileged at the time, but I started my career in like boiler room esque recruitment agency. Talking like 12, 13 hour days, cold calling people. Oh my goodness. I hate getting cold called now. But that was, and yeah, the amount of expletives I'd be told on a regular basis. How do you get my phone number?
How'd you do this?
How
Yeah.
do you get my phone number? Who are you? Get out of here. Um, so I have quite a thick skin in general, but definitely professionally when it comes to that. Also, when anyone's like, "Oh, I'm a bit worried about networking," I'm like, "What is the worst thing that can happen?" Like, genuinely, like, what's the worst? Like, I think people think, "Oh, they don't respond." I'm like, who cares? Like,
Move
who
on.
cares? They haven't responded. Or they say, "Oh, you're rude. You're wasting my time." I was like, no one says that. No one says that. And even if they're thinking it, or if they do say that, it's like, all right, whatever. I don't like you anymore. That doesn't sound like a nice person to network with in the first place. So that's fine. If you're respectful, the chances of you writing a really highly inappropriate intro message is really really unlikely. So yeah, so I think just build up the courage and go do it. And yeah, and by saying go do it, like, just being really purposeful with your outreach, and also I think people won't feel like you're wasting their time if it's very personalized and also there's a very clear purpose. So some pet peeves of mine, for example. So I get a lot of messages on LinkedIn, a lot. Hate ones that are clearly generic, just like hi, not even my first name in there, and there's just like loads of text. I'm like, delete it. I don't even get two sentences in. Or it's like, hey Joe, I was just reaching out to connect. Again, pointless. I
Why?
like but yeah. Why are you doing this? It's like connect. Why? If someone reaches out to me and is like, hey Joe, I've watched loads of your YouTube videos, or I've been following your career for a while. I'm trying to get into the games industry. Have you got any like one or two things that you could point me in the right direction? I'm like, cool. I love that message, and it's like personalized in one sentence. I've watched your YouTube videos and stuff. Great. And the second thing, it has an action item. It's like, can you help me with this? Also, asking for help is also a great psychological tool to get people to respond to you. But yeah, and even if my response is like, I'm too busy, I'm so sorry, best of luck. Not usually. Usually it's like, yeah, sure. Like, what question do you have? You start a dialogue, right? So yeah, that's my advice for networking. It's like be personalized, be just your authentic self, as in like don't need to like use all of this like weird corporate terms. Um, and yeah, and then just actually be specific. My last bit of advice on this is whenever you apply for a job at any job, then apply and then reach out to at least three people at that company saying, I've applied for this job. And that's another great way that you can network. You can be
Uh,
like, hey, I just wanted to flag that I've applied for this specific job, drop the job title in there. Reason why I applied is because I love this about your company and the games that you make. Here's a link to my portfolio. If you could flag my application to whoever's reviewing them, I'd massively appreciate it. I always say I could have 1,000, 1,000 applications, and maybe one or two people will actually do that. You can honestly be in the top 0.1% by just doing that every time you apply, and it will probably take you 10 minutes to find some people, craft a message, send that out. Like that's why I do every time I apply to any job. That's how I got to work at companies like EA, Epic, and now like a leading gaming VC.
that's
I do
drive,
it every
man.
time. Yeah.
I respect that immensely, and I wanted to add to everything you said, which is I don't think people realize how surprised they would be about the amount of people that are willing to help, that are willing
Mm.
to answer a message if the way you said it, like you structure it properly and you're like, hey, this is what I'm about. This is what I'm looking for. I saw your profile. I'd love to just ask you for some advice. How can I get in a job in your company, or how can I do this? People want to help, especially in
Yeah.
games where we have so many passionate people. Like that's my experience. I think it's experience for a lot of people that I've spoken to. And if anyone is listening that's trying to get a job in games or a job in general, just get out there and just try to build a story and try to connect with people and say like, I want to get a job in games. Can you give me some advice? What would you do if you were in my place? And it
Yeah.
really helps out.
Yeah, the specific question stuff is good. Like you could reach out to a tech artist and just be like, "Hey, I was just curious to know, like, how did you go about learning Houdini in the first place?" Or like, or something like that. And someone's gonna be like, because there's everyone in the games industry knows it's so hard to get into the games, especially now with all layoffs and everything else. I
Yeah.
think everyone in the games industry right now if are very aware of how lucky they are to have a job in this industry. And so because of that, I think on average, people are also way more receptive to taking on messages and replying, even if it's just short replies, something. So yeah, there's a bunch of nice people in this industry. So
It really is true. Let's talk about the CV and the cover letter,
oh
because those
yeah,
are the mythical two components. With AI now, a lot has kind of changed. I mean, not even prior to AI, you had kind of keyword trackers, things that would like your CV basically would go through like this big churn where it didn't have the right words, it wouldn't go through. And there's people that I think now with AI, your cover letter can get written perfectly. And so what I've been saying to a lot of people that are applying or people that ask me for advice about how can I get a job in games or in general is your cover letter has to be different now because anyone can sound perfectly respectful and very eloquent and very and have a very flowing English or whatever language you're applying. You need to be more specific now. And one advice that I got from he was in my last episode, AJ Doctor Doom, who spoke to me about VR, and I actually wrote to him like 5, 6 years ago, and I asked him for advice, and I was like, how do I wanted to work in VR at the time, so this was before even gaming. I just loved the idea of virtual reality. And I'm like, how do I get a job in VR, and even in your company? And he wrote to me some really good advice that I took to heart, and we discussed in the episode, which is you should be able to communicate. You should be able to find three problems that you have identified in my product or business. And then in your cover letter, explain how you would solve them. And that can be in the capacity of marketing, that could be in the capacity of recruitment, of design, of whatever it may be. But show me that you, rather than just writing a cover letter and saying, I've done this, this, and that, and I think I'd be a great hire because I'm a good fit, try to go the extra mile and show me that you've really put some thought into how you could hit the ground running in my company. And I think that advice resonates now more than ever because cover letters can get written so easily. So before we get into the CV, because once again, I did the classic thing where I asked two questions in one. What are your thoughts on what cover letters are and what their place is in recruitment today?
Cool. Good. Big question. Also, good anecdote as well, and good advice from AJ. Here's some quick tips, and this is something I do every time I apply for a job. I make my cover letter and my CV the same document, rather than separating them out. Reason why I do that is that recruiting systems are still very clunky, and especially if you're applying to a small company where you're literally emailing it in, the chances of them losing the second document, because it's just like they just want the CV.
Yeah.
So I always make sure my cover letters are so personalized. There's absolutely no way this cover letter could be used for any other job, other than that job at that company, at that time. So even and I write them to the point where I'm so proud of them. I want every single person who interviews me, I want them to read that first and then to look at my CV. And so the whole point of a cover letter is to do just that. Like, your CV could just be the same every single time you apply. It is just quite a factual explanation of you and your experience and your achievements. But your cover letter is like, why are these skills, experience, and achievements really amazing for that particular job at that company? Also, little things to prove that you're not using AI, like hyperlink stuff in your cover letter. Be like, hey, I remember seeing the trailer for this video, hyperlink.
Nice.
Or like, hey, you should take a look at this, hyperlink that. That's just like, that's such a minor thing. But if you're trying to make it look like it's not AI, my thoughts on AI though, like, there are some wild opinions on LinkedIn about this. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
this resume or CV was clearly written by AI. It's like, who cares? Like, I'd rather have a well-written, grammatically correct CV that may have been used by AI, than not. But yeah, you are right in that you run the risk of it seeming generic. When everyone has access to the same tools, it can feel generically written. But I think generically written is better than poorly written. So that's why I think I don't have much gripe with AI when it comes to writing job ads or anything like that. But it does just take you to the base level if you want to really stand out, like you were suggesting. Making it really personalized and specific to the job is great. Um, some quick advice on cover letters: 250 words, like half a page roughly. Don't make it an essay. Make it really punchy. And also, when it comes to CVs, this is a bit of advice I always give to people about CVs. Like, I would say I've read, well, definitely tens of thousands, about to say 100,000. I'm sure if I could break it down, 13 years of reading CVs. It's a long time. And my habit, and this is a habit of many, many recruiters, that we read it bottom up, because it tends to be people put their education and earlier experiences at the bottom. So if you want to kind of read their life story, you tend to scroll down and then you go up that way. Most recent experience at the top. How I read it. And I put my hobbies, interests, and achievements at the bottom, as well. And so my hobbies, interests, achievements section is like a whole third of a page, takes up a lot. But I say to people, that section is like, all the rest is quite factual, and then that is where I inject my personality. It's the only part of a CV where you say what you like to do in your spare time, what you're passionate about. So I talk about like the eating competitions I've done and all of the endurance events I've done and the sports I played growing up and the specific video games I like to play and my favorite books and where I've traveled and all this sort of stuff comes up in interviews all the time. I remember actually when I was interviewing at EA, a now really good friend of mine who was interviewing me at the time, first question was, tell me about this hot dog eating competition that you did. First question. First question in the interview at EA. I was like, I would love to tell you about the hot dog eating competition that I did. And that was just, it was a great icebreaker, proved he read my CV. And that was just so funny. But yeah, it's the hobbies, interest, achievements section is great icebreaker fuel for your interviewers as well. So the amount of times people just put 3 bullet points. It's like, my hobbies and interests, gaming, running, traveling. It's like I would love to hear about your
Be
game.
specific, right?
Yeah. I'd love to hear more about that. Yeah. Um, but yeah, one and I keep saying last bit of advice. Here is my last advice. I'll let you talk now. But if you are a junior or entry level, then you should have 1-page CV. And if you are mid-level or above, it should be 2 pages. And funny enough, when you get it goes kind of full circle. The amount of times I've interviewed executives, like 20 plus years of experience, and they come back to having a 1-page CV. It's quite interesting. But yeah, never go longer than that.
I really love the point where you're saying, and I felt this personally when I was applying because I thought my hobbies and my interests, that's something I shouldn't put in because I just need to talk about what I do in the role and no one will ask for that. But if you're really specific and you don't write like, I don't know, valedictorian in high school or wrote some generic things that happened really long ago. But if you pick things that specifically make you unique and who you are, like even if you played a game, mention if you love Mario Kart, mention that you won a tournament in Mario Kart, like, and that's something that you do and you play all the time. Because that helps break the ice. At the end of the day, when you're working at a job, you're working with people, and you want someone to get a good gist of who you are, and that you could be someone that they could hang out with. You end up spending more time with your colleagues than often with your family in a very sad way, and not in a sad way, but that's just the reality of the
Yeah.
working world. And so people want to hire also based on not trying to pick away from, oh, you're not unique enough, or you're not special enough, but they want to know that there's something about you. Every single person is unique and special, and that should come out in your CV in some way. Um, I do want to ask, when I was breaking into the tech industry, and I guess in games as well, I used to do all these extracurriculars like hackathons. I would write articles on Medium. I would. I didn't really have a portfolio because I wasn't necessarily an artist, so I didn't know what I'd populate in that portfolio. But every time I apply for roles, or I would apply for roles, there's always that little box at the bottom which says, "Would you like to put any additional links or references?" What are your thoughts on that? Like for anyone that's trying to hire that always gets a little bit anxious because they're like, maybe I have a great CV and I have a great cover letter, but I don't have a personal website or I haven't done my portfolio. Like how important is that? And how do you know if you need it or not?
Oh, well, just to answer that specifically, I think that just comes as like a default in most recruiting systems. So it's kind of like just a catch-all. But to go back to like the first part where you're talking about, like all of this extracurricular stuff is so needed, and people in the games industry that are hiring want to see it, um, for sure. Like in fact, earlier this week, I was chatting to someone. They work at very large B2B SaaS company. And they were like, I'm so passionate about games. I'm like, cool. Tell me.
Tell me
tell
more.
me. Tell me what that means. And they talked about all the games that they love to play. And I was like, okay, aside from playing video games, what else did you? And they're like, what do you mean? And I was like, what, got anything else, or do you just play video games? He's like, yeah, I play video games. I was like, okay, have you tried to learn how to make games? Do you go to gaming events? Have you like joined any have you been to joined any online communities? Is there anything like, do you create anything to do with games to like prove to me that you have taken it from I love to play games to I'm intellectually curious about games, and like because we use the word passionate that gets thrown around a lot.
Yeah.
Passionate to me just means it's a combination of energy and intellectual curiosity just mashed together. Like you have a lot of energy being put into being curious about something? And it was basically, the answer was basically no. And I was like, okay, well, let me school you very nicely, of course, on this, because when you apply, and there'll be 999 other people applying, and they say, I love playing video games. Be like, great. You know what? There's like billions of people on the planet who play video games. I think half the planet play video games. I was like, you and other 3 billion people. It's like, so what is it? What are you doing to prove that it's actually a next step up from that? Um, and so this is how you can identify people from outside of games that you think would be a fantastic fit for roles within games as well. So, like, for example, for me, like I'm a recruiter, like on the business side portfolio, but I had my own personal website, and I would write about video games. I'd also post videos about that. I could also tell them about the LAN parties and the tournaments I organized at my company. Also the meetups that I went to, and like going to Comic-Con, and all of, like, it was just like games were just much more like than just, oh, I play with my friends sometimes. So, yeah, if you bring all of these examples, also, last point on this, especially for interns and juniors, and, well, to be honest, anyone cracking into the industry, if you can't get internships or work experience, you can make your own experience, as in game jams. I would say game jams are so fantastic, especially if you ship something at the end. It's like you've shipped something. You know how to collaborate and take something from concept to release. Um, that's amazing. And sometimes you can rack up enough experience from game jams and just your own side projects than a really bad or poor internship could ever teach you. Um, Sometimes internships are purely, they're just shadowing the entire time. They're not actually doing anything. So if you're actually out there building stuff, doing stuff, have a portfolio to show, then you should definitely do that. Um, so yeah, that was a lot of thoughts in one, but I hope I answered your question.
That was spot on, and you absolutely did. Like I can emphasize that so much because like I mentioned, I did a bunch of hackathons, which I think they're just another word for game jams. I think the gaming word for hackathon is game jam. And what I did is that it would be a process. I would do a hackathon or a game jam, and then I would then take that experience, take a couple photographs, and then I'd write an article where I would explain what was the process. And because I was trying to apply for product manager roles, I'd be like, okay, here's the problem that we encountered. Here was the process that we went through. This was the hypothesis we had. These were the metrics. This was the design we chose. This was our solution. How did that go? And I would break it all down. And the trick to this isn't just that you hope someone will read it or that you hope that you can share this in a CV, but that when you go to do the interview, because you wrote that stuff down, man, because it's all in your head. It's seared in because you took the time to think about it and structure it. And so I go to an interview and they'd ask me, it's like, what have you done, like to show that you want to work in tech? And I'd be like, well, let me tell you about this hackathon and the problem I solved with a team, demonstrating my capabilities of being able to work with others and build something out of nothing and with very little experience. Because at the end of the day, I don't know if you agree with this, but you can learn a lot on the job. Like I know that people hire for specific experience or specific skills, and I think for certain technical jobs it's really important. But by and large, I've met so many people, and I speak for myself as well, where you learn as you go, man. If you care about what you do and you care about the area, or you care about gaming, or you just care in
Yeah.
general, you will put in the work to learn, and people will invest in you. You're an investment.
Yeah. And just to add to that, like when you're in a recruiting team in games, so like Epic and EA, the first thing that any games recruiter will do, if it's a product focused role, like a game dev or an artist or a designer or whatever, they click on your portfolio first. They, before reading your cover letter, before looking at your CV, it's like finding your portfolio and going to that first. Because if you if they have an amazing portfolio, you clearly have the skills for the role, and everything else, then it's like great. Because if it's the other way around, you could have all of these amazing companies on your CV and this degree and everything else, and then you go to click on the portfolio and it's like, this is terrible. You're not going to get the job. Whereas the inverse is true. You can have, no pedigree degree. In fact, no degree at all. You could never have worked at a recognizable named studio. But if your portfolio is amazing and you've shipped games or you've completed projects even, And someone can see that, it's like great, because ultimately, like, hiring at the end of the day is a means to an end. You're hiring this team to ship a game to create a successful company. And it's like, yeah, you just want people in there that will help you achieve that. Like the leadership of that game studio want people in the company to help them achieve those goals. Um, so don't lose sight of that if you are, yeah, and don't hesitate about applying if you think, oh, that job's too good for me. Just if it's realistic, obviously, if it's like, don't apply to the AAA art director role straight out of university with no portfolio. I mean, there's realism to it, but still, like stretching yourself and pushing through it's no harm either. Usually, the worst case is you just get rejected. So yeah, that's a
I
bit on
want to,
top about how recruiters think when it comes to
I think it's super,
reviewing portfolios. Yeah,
it's super insightful. And I want to ask one more area, which is LinkedIn. And
yeah,
specifically, I have used LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn has helped me because I've actually gotten my last job through LinkedIn, and people would reach out to me. And I think that's a very beautiful thing to experience where prior to in my early 20s and up to almost my late 20s, I had to grind and apply to hundreds of jobs and rejections and rejections. And then once you start getting kind of your flow and you start kind of establishing yourself in the industry, it actually becomes the inverse where recruiters start reaching out to you. And one thing that I think really helps my profile, and because you're a recruiter, I really want to talk to you about this, is recommendations, man. Like recommendations are if you think that your CV can be anything, people can write down any experience and say any number of things, and at the end of the day, it's a document that says I did this, this, and that's great, and you take it at face value, and you go to and you get interviewed, and people vouch or kind of try to understand if that's true, and they may kind of reach out for an actual referral at the company you're in more kind of serious or senior roles. But to me, the recommendation always stood out as something that will last forever because it requires you to go to someone that you have a personal relationship with or a professional relationship with that you've worked with well, and then ask them to go onto your profile and then write some very nice words about how you've collaborated. How important are recommendations in recruitment, especially those that are visible on LinkedIn? Because you can't just attach all your recommendations on a CV or cover letter when you're applying.
yeah. Great question there. I think it's great because it doesn't get talked about enough. So, how important it? I think the answer to that is really dependent on two things: the quality of the recommendation, and then also the importance you yourself put on that recommendation. So, I actually personally value them really highly. So every time I leave a job, I always make sure that because I've usually left jobs on a high and on a good note, that's that's usually a great time to ask for recommendations. Another good time is when you've just completed a great amount of work and you've caught someone who thinks you're amazing. Just be like, hey, could you write like 2 sentences about me on LinkedIn? I really appreciate it. Getting into that habit's great. I was just thinking, I was just gonna go have a browse at my own LinkedIn and see how many I've got because I've been such an ambassador for this. Okay, so I've got 53 on my.
Oh, I've got 17, man. I thought I had a lot.
Yeah,
You've
yeah.
got 53.
uh, yeah. So, yeah, I think it's yeah, 53. So, I'm collecting them like Pokemon.
Yes,
No,
likewise.
but seriously, I put a lot of value into them. So I ask people I genuinely, genuinely respect and had a great working relationship with, and so when I left Epic, I reached out to people that I've hired, people that I've worked with, hiring managers, and it was just like, I loved working with you. As I'm leaving, I would massively appreciate it. It's going to really help me out in my career if you could just write, even one sentence would be amazing. If you could just take 2 minutes to do that. And funny enough, people love to help out, especially if they like you and you've worked with them, they know you. So that's why I've done it. So the quality of the recommendations is there because if you're targeted with who you ask, right? But the second thing is I was saying if you value it yourself. So that these exist at the bottom of your profile, and a lot of the time people don't see them.
Yeah.
So it's really down to you during an interview or even better in a cover letter, even just be like, really want to highlight some of my recommendations. You hyperlink them. Go take a look. And yeah, and I think they do add value. Now, the way like the skeptical part of me is thinking like, well, you can get people that just to write them. So Really, so I think really encourage your writers of your recommendations to be really specific, maybe about a specific piece of work or specific time frame they worked with you on, or something like that. If they're generic, it's just going to look meaningless. But if they're really specific, then that's going to add a lot of value there. So I've used them to my advantage a lot. Like, for example, when I left Huddle, like my last job outside of games, like all three co-founders of that company wrote me LinkedIn recommendations, and that massively helped me, like going into EA, just seeing that endorsement from these people. And so, yeah, yeah, I'd say make sure. Yeah, so I put a lot of value in them, but people only if they're specific. So the quality that you need, and only if I actually see them, only if you actually bring it up. Can you go check out my recommendations? Otherwise, I might miss it. So yeah.
Absolutely, I agree. Joe, I usually ask people at the end of the pod for advice on how to break into the games industry, but this has literally been our entire podcast.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I
yeah.
still want to leave the floor in case there's anything else you'd like to mention, even though everything here has been
Oh,
amazing. But
I will go back to I will go back to that point that I skimmed over really briefly earlier, in that I said I would take a job anywhere in the games industry. I think the most common mistake of people when they say I want to get into games, when you actually drill into what they think that means, they think I want to work at a game studio. And game studios make up such a small portion of the entire industry. And if it's your goal to get into games, understand that uh, so yeah, two things here. Understand that one, industry is huge, and you might be really happy and fulfilled at a variety of, like, service providers, retailers, game. It could be game studio, game publisher. It could be a variety of sizes. Um, yeah, so that's one. So just really research, understand like what parameters there are and the varieties of stuff. Second thing is like it took me 5 years of working in my career till I got into games. Getting into games industry right now is really, really tough. So um, I don't want people to lose hope. What I would really advise is build up the skill set that you need so that later on you can transition down the line. So say you're a programmer and you want to build AAA games in Unreal, it's like, take that C++ job building embedded electronic devices, right? And work on games in your spare time. Suddenly, a few years in, you're a phenomenal C++ programmer who knows Unreal. Like, brilliant. You can easily transfer into. It's like you're a graphic designer. You wanted to get into games. Join a marketing agency that has games clients. Do graphic design work for these clients. Suddenly, you've got a portfolio of games-related graphic design work. Or you're a recruiter, and so go into the tech industry, hire for jobs that you find in games, designers, engineers, etc., and then eventually try and make your way over. So there's so many ways. There's so many games adjacent industries as well, like VFX and film is just one of many examples. So if you can't get into the games directly, like your number one dream could be game studio. And it's like, okay, what are the other tiers to that dream, or stepping stones almost? And like, okay, like, and therefore it feels better. And like, if you hit any one of these different industries, that would be a step towards your goal, and the
you're on
goal
track.
being, yeah, goal being having a happier existence ultimately. So yeah, that tends to be my 2 points of advice. One. So just summarize. One, understand how truly big the games industry is, and two, understand how to learn all the skills, and understand it might take years, and that's fine.
That's okay. It's part of the journey, man. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you so much for being a guest in the podcast, Joe. Thanks again, really. And for anyone out there, I'd like to highlight that Joe has his own podcast,
Oh
which
yeah.
you can mention. I'll put it in the links below. But he does talk about recruitment and gaming. If people want to learn more about what it takes to break into games, and Joe, if you just want to kind of mention that to the audience, of course, it'll be in the link.
Yeah. I almost forgot. So
Like,
yes. So yeah, I have a podcast called The Talent Game, and I interview leaders from across the games industry, specifically about talent topics. So that could be hiring and recruiting, or people management, leadership, culture, diversity and inclusion, loads of stuff that comes into just like specifically that people space. So finished season 2, so it's 20 episodes that are live. It's called The Talent Game. And those episodes are also on YouTube as well. And if anyone wants to connect to me on LinkedIn, great. And last plug for my the company I currently work at, Play Ventures. If you head to the job board, there's something there that says sign up to the Talent Network. If you sign up to that, I will see your profile and I can assess whether you could be a fit for potentially the 90 companies in our investment portfolio. So that could be a good way to enter the games industry as well.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, thanks again, and I hope to see you soon. Maybe we'll have another one of these episodes. But do check out his podcast, everyone. And yeah, that's it.
Great. Thanks, Alessandra.